We are finally back, and personally, I am so fucking pumped to be covering, well, the first 3 episodes of season 3 of Amazon Prime's hit TV show, Invincible. Man, it is so good to be back. These episodes absolutely crushed in my mind. There was romance, there was action, there was betrayal, everything you could want, and it feels like we're just picking back up where we left off. Paul, you were not on the season 2 recording, so why don't you take a couple minutes of your time and let the people know what your thoughts were of the show as a whole, and then talk about specifically these 3 episodes and how it feels to be back returning for season 3.
Yeah, this show is great. It's so easy to get lost in it, it was a little unfortunate last season when we had that big break, the first part
Mm-hmm.
of the season, second part. But it's so easy just to rewatch, fall in love with the characters again. And it's funny because you guys would record on this and you guys would watch the episodes first, and then you or Luke would text in the chat like, "Oh my god, like the entire vibe of the show shifted. Like this is going in somewhere where like we never would have guessed." So I know that going in to the episodes, and I still don't know where it's going. Like the curveballs still hit. Nobody's safe, it feels like,
Right.
and you love that because there's no like plot armor for characters or anything. Anybody could just die. So it's such a good show. Just a different take on superpowers and superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Much like The Boys, but so different, and it's got its own complete feel to it. And the voice acting is insane. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
god, the cast is absurd, and they put so much emotion into everything. It's incredible. So this is up there with anime, with the level of a lot of the voice acting, a lot of the emotion that it gets put in against it. So
Agreed.
I love it. And this season, the first 3 episodes have started so strong, and just the pacing of it too, and where
Oh
we
my
left off.
god.
It's
Mm-hmm.
great. It's so good.
Yeah, I feel like I said, it's just we are we haven't, we're not just figuratively picking it up. I know 3 months have passed since the end of season 2 in terms of the world itself, but man, I mean, we didn't skip a beat. We get right into it. Paul, if you just want to kind of tell the people what we're going to be discussing today and how we're going to be discussing it really quickly, and then we can kind of just jump right into it.
All right, cool. So we are going to cover all 3 of these episodes, but we're going to cover one at a time. So I'm going to read a quick summary, a short little bullet point list of episode 1. We're going to talk about some of the big scenes that we loved, and then we're just going to jump to episode 2 and do the same thing. So if you're ready, Dave, you can hop on in,
All righty, I'm
dive
ready to
on
get
in,
good to go. Dive on in.
dive on in. All right. Episode 1, You're Not Laughing Now. We got the coolest reintroduction to Mark. He is training. We find out over the past 90 days, and his speed has increased 65%, his endurance 70%, and his strength, and we double checked this, 138%. I mean, the coolest training montage ever.
Yeah, and even to go a step further, they, to give a real life measure of his strength, they ask Donald, they're like, hey, how would he fare against that Viltrumite chick that showed up a few months ago? And they're like, you know what? He's probably ready for that. But the issue is not her, it's the person that's following her that is coming, that is supposedly stronger than Anissa, was her name. So it was just cool to see at least like a visual of where he's at in terms of strength. Like he is on Anissa's power level, although he still is getting his ass kicked, which is like, come on, what are we doing here a little bit? But at the same time, it's cool seeing the strength training pay off for over these 3 months and how far he's come.
Just getting a solid number, too. The fact that, they
Mm-hmm.
even gave us that is such a cool factor to see how much he's grown.
Yeah.
But continuing on, we have a duo that comes to steal the Declaration of Independence. Not sure if that's going to come back into play, but while that's happening, we get Multi Paul, the brother of Duplicate. He comes to kill Rex for letting his sister die, but Kate reveals that she's alive, she's engaged to Immortal, and then at the end of that, Invincible takes Paul to jail. We got Ray also reveals that she's alive to the rest of the Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
We got Oliver reveals that he has found his superpowers. And not
Hmm.
only does Debbie Mark know that Cecil has also taken notes,
Hmm.
uh, Rick, friend of William, I believe his name's William, right?
Yes, it is William.
Yes. Rick is still having pain from what Sinclair did. We got a little bit on Sinclair too. We got Mark asking Eve out, but he also mentions the future Eve he met. And William and Rick were trying to warn Mark about bringing that up and how it could be messy, but he decided to be honest and truthful, which I got to respect. But Eve did not take it incredibly well.
No. There's a lot to take in there. I'll cut you off just a little bit here, just to kind of slip in some notes. But of course, got to shout out Multi Paul. I saw that name, and one, of course, thought of our host here, Paul. But two, was just cracking up because the name is just like so simple, but it's like it just I was cracking up at how simple and funny it was. But always love the violence, man. I always love when the animation gets brutal like that.
Oh, blood is like half the canvas sometimes. They always got red on the palette ready to go.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it is funny because do you think their real names are Paul and Kate? Or do you
Oh
think they
yeah.
changed it to superhero? Like, did their parents know that
Yeah.
they
Going
were gonna
into it.
get powers? So
Mhm.
they were like, we're gonna give you a name that you can make something
A
fun and
layup. Yeah, a nice
yeah,
layup name for you. That's a good question. I'm sure the parents, I don't know if in the past they've discussed like if how superpower hereditary works, but if like both their parents, have a multiple power or something, and then maybe they discuss it at birth. They're like, okay, multi Paul, so let's just name him Paul, like
yeah.
who knows? But I am glad that honestly Invincible took that guy to jail. It was just something that is so quick and really you don't think too much about. But I mean, in some shows, you'd see a superhero kind of go off the rails a little bit like this, and they just, someone else would step in and be like, "Hey, you're going too far. It's just why don't you chill out?" Mark made some excellent points. He's like, "Bro, you just tried to kill Rex. Like you admitted to wanting to kill him just now, and two, you let the people who were stealing the Declaration of Independence get away. Like I'm glad he's showing no mercy for these people, whether they are heroes or not, because Multiple definitely deserved what was coming to him in terms of at least going to jail. Like this was so fucked up. Rex was saying like this wasn't my fault, it was just your normal mission. I tried my best to even save her, and he's just calling bullshit and just beating the shit out of Rex. So honestly, fuck Multi-Paul. Sorry, Paul. I know you might have a connection with him because you're a Paul's, but fuck this guy.
No, I was like, dude, you're staining the name. Most
Mm.
of the time, I don't know why, besides Paul Atreides, anybody that's named Paul in a movie or TV show is usually like a creep or a dork or like a bad person.
I kind of feel the same way about Dave, to be honest. Like I was just watching that American Dad episode where Klaus is like looking at the viewers and he's like, "Why don't you just go kill yourself, Dave?" And it's like, ah, shit, he got me.
That is incredible. I've never
Yeah,
got with one of those, but
yeah.
that's brutal. So
And for
yeah,
the people listening, me and Paul are huge American Dad and Family Guy fans, South Park. So there might be tons of references you aren't getting. Just know that it's probably from one of those three.
yeah. Leave a comment if you do get the reference. Also, leave a comment of a good Dave or a good Paul in a TV show or movie. Get some
Yeah.
positivity in here.
Yeah. Let us know some good names, good characters that play our names.
Fun fact, I think Multi Paul is Simu Lee from Shang-Chi. He joined the cast and
Oh,
is
no way.
voicing him now. Yeah. I mean, it's
Okay,
just
cool.
growing. Like everybody's like, "Oh, like do you want to voice a character Invincible?" And they're like, "Hell yeah, I'll be a part of that project."
Amazon Prime has one of the worst interfaces out there, but I absolutely love that they show like the actor and like the fun fact trivia. Sometimes I like am pausing way too much to look up the fun fact trivia or to see what the actors are, but it always blows my mind when I forget or see someone new and I'm like, of course they're just getting another star-studded actor to play this character, they just have all the manpower at their sides at this point.
I'm so happy you said that because I had the exact same notes. I was literally wanted to gush at one point and complain about how Amazon Prime has the worst interface.
Dude, it's
And
the absolute worst.
I'll put on subtitles and the subtitles will be a minute early.
Oh, oh. It
And
was
it's
like
real.
spoiling shit. Like it's totally fine, and then like it's the subtitles jump ahead. And I'm like, all right, well now I just know the next scene.
Yeah,
It's the
and
worst.
I go to turn it off and I can't. It literally won't let me
It
turn it
won't let
off.
you.
It's terrible. So,
It's so
but
stupid.
like you said, when you pause, sometimes they have those little facts, which are great, and I
Mhm.
love that they have the voice actors right there.
Yes, definitely.
But
And like you click their names, it'll show you their whole cast history, like what they've been a part of too. Like it's the idea is great. It's just it just doesn't work. I don't know
yeah,
why this system doesn't work.
I hope there's people out there listening that are just yes,
Yeah, that
like yes, finally.
those one people, that one listener who has the ins at Amazon.
All right, so jumping back into our episode 1, we have Doc Seismic. I thought he was just going to make an appearance every season as a joke, but all of a sudden,
Dude,
he's the real deal, and he has been planning with Earth creatures silently while he's been in his cell, and he has captured all heroes in the U.S. It looks like, besides 2, Invincible and Eve, and he found all of them by learning their vibrations and then sending his creatures to go kidnap them, which was insane.
this is one of the main reasons why Invincible is such an amazing show is because you get these small nobody characters in season 1. This is also what kind of made Arcane such a great show too. It's like you just get introduced to these small nobodies who you think are nobodies, but end up having such important roles later on in the show. It's just such an easy world building technique that more shows should just be doing. I agree. I thought Doc Seisman was just going to be your classic, as they say, villain of the week character. Here he is showing that he has world breaker level of power, which is just insane to think about. But that's just what makes Invincible so great is you throw away these characters. You're like, there's no chance I'm ever seeing this guy again. And lo and behold, they have a huge transformation and impact on the show in later seasons.
They were showing him in his cell, and I was like, "Oh, cool, that's a little nod, just showing,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
that oh, he was in the past, like a little reward for the viewers of paying attention." But nope,
Mhm.
he gets really close, honestly, to getting everybody. It looks like Invincible and Eve are pretty much screwed before Cecil sends in his Reanimen along with Darkwing too, who end up
Are you
saving the
saying
day.
Darkwing 2 is in Darkwing the number 2 or is in Darkwing also?
Darkwing number 2 as well, because I did have the number on there, but I get how it works
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
ways.
Mhm.
So Mark is pissed about the Reaniman and Darkwing. Um, he starts freaking out, saying they should be in prison. Darkwing and Sinclair, that is the guy who has been working on these Reanimen for Cecil. So he runs back to Cecil and they get into an argument. Cecil's trying to explain that he has tried to reform them, reuse them, repurpose them because they can't repay everyone for what they did from inside of cell. They can only, you know, try to make it right from their mistakes by being out there and actually doing something positive.
Mhm.
But Mark doesn't like that. I get it.
Mhm.
I could see both sides, but before they could really talk it out, Cecil kind of leads Mark into the white room and all the Reanimen pop out. And this is the first real escalation of the both of theirs conflict. And it was a great episode 1 kind of cliffhanger.
Mhm.
We do get one quick scene. We see Alan and Nolan talking on a Viltrumite prison, which
Yes.
love when Alan's involved. Another thing where Alan's like a little guy, like villain of the episode who turns out to be a friend, but
Right.
now he's like pivotal. I mean, what he did in season 2 was crazy, and he's already making moves now in season 3. So that was
I
great to see.
am so all in on the Alan and Nolan interactions. They're just so funny because obviously Alan is just hilarious, and Alan just is throwing out these titles. He's like, "Oh, you care for me, like we're best friends now." Like it's amazing, and I just the fact that Nolan's like ignoring him, even though Alan can just read his mind and just constantly just pepper him with questions and just annoy him further. It's just such an amazing interaction. I love those two together, and I can't wait to see. I'm definitely the most focused on where that storyline goes, like how they're going to break out and how they're going to head to Earth if that is their goal. So definitely the most interest in this storyline for me personally. But the big thing being that Alan is now probably a top 3 character in the show in terms of strength. I mean, Omni-Man was legit worried that Alan was going to be able to be dissected by this huge laser. He was completely impervious to the laser. It seemed to just kind of hurt him a little bit, but man, Alan is so strong, and I can't wait to see him like actually go full throttle and what he can do.
Yeah, these Viltrumites are literally trying to laser him open to study his insides to see what makes him so strong, and their freaking strongest laser doesn't touch him. So he's just nuts. And you're so right. This is a duo that I never ever would have guessed would have been
No.
on screen, let alone work as well together
Mhm.
on screen, because the turn of Nolan again, something I never would have seen. This happened, middle of the season season 2, but
Mhm.
the fact that it was a twist that Mark's dad, Nolan, Omni-Man, is actually evil, and then another twist into the fact that he's actually one of the good Viltrumites in the sense that he feels remorse for
A
what
little
he's
bit.
done. Yeah,
Right.
it's but to the Viltrumites, that's like the ultimate sign of betrayal, is caring about these lesser beings. So
Mhm.
it's such an interesting concept because, like, don't you want to praise Nolan because nobody else has really ever rebelled before, which we find out there's like, one other, which is the guy
Mhm.
helping Alan. So I cannot wait for that interaction when Nolan meets up with, oh
Oh
man,
my god, yeah,
I forget
definitely.
his, but that will be incredible. So, but
Yes.
like Nolan is telling Alan right here, you're stronger than before, strong enough to break out of here if you wanted. And Alan's like, first of all, I'm flattered. Thank you for noticing.
Yeah.
Like, Seth Rogen is so good. He's so funny.
When he's like, "You're halfway to joining the cause," and it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
so funny. It's so
And then
good.
what you said earlier, like he gets back from the laser and Nolan's like, "You're alive?" And Alan's like, "Oh, like you're happy that I survived. Yeah, you're so close to joining." And he's like, "Oh, you're ignoring me. That's not how new best friends should treat each other." It's so money.
I love it. But I'm gonna take it back a little bit, and I might be. Oh, this is gonna be kind of. I'm gonna go to the Mark and Cecil discussion a little bit, and this opinion that I have might stem from like all 3 of the episodes, but I'll try to keep it here. It is very hard for me to choose a side, to be honest, because they both do make very good cases. Cecil obviously just having dealt with Omni Man and that huge betrayal to him, and now he's trying to, you know, take it, be careful of Mark and keep an eye on him. But at the same time, Mark is dealing with these criminals, and Cecil is trying to, turn them into good guys. It's I get it. Like both sides make really good points. I think the issue at the end of the day is that they're both overly aggressive. And I think Mark was the first aggressor here. Like, yes, Mark's best friend and his boyfriend almost had their lives completely ruined by Sinclair. I get that. But at the same time, it has been 3 months. I don't, whether or not that's like an actual good amount of time for someone to reform, I don't know.
Probably
But
not. Yeah.
probably not. But it's just like Cecil is trying. Like, wouldn't you want, like, if you cared about someone who is probably bad, but like, wouldn't you want to see them do well? It's such a hard cause. But Mark is in such a negative place from what his dad had done to him, not only just on Earth, but on that on the planet of the aliens. I can't even remember what that alien planet was. And having seen him now kind of become a little bit more human, like Mark is totally confused, and I think he's taking out a lot of his aggression and anger on Cecil here in this moment. But to me, honestly, Mark is the hypocrite here. Like he was almost willing to accept his dad on the other alien planet. I know he didn't fully, but he's on the path of forgiving his father. Why can't that be the same for Sinclair? Why can't that be the same for Darkwing too? I I get it. I really do. It's hard for me to decide whose side I'm on. I don't really think I have one. They both, at the end of the day, I both get what they're trying to do. But I think it's just a matter of like how aggressive both of them handled it. Like Mark did not need to make those threats. Cecil did not need to have the Animen or whatever. What are they called?
Reaniman.
Reanimen completely beat the shit out of Mark. Even installing the chip, I would say, is definitely too far, you know. But again, Cecil got betrayed by Omni-Man, who's like a world level threat, and I don't know. It's so hard for me to choose a side. I'm not going to, I think, as of right now, but I do. That's why I also really like this plot line, is because of how gray it is and how it's so hard for me to make a decision. It's just like, I don't know who to root for. You know, I like that.
No, I totally agree. And I did the same exact thing. I bounced back and forth between like, well, I get where Cecil's coming from. I totally
Right.
understand where Mark's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to actually say you're 60-40 and you're leaning, agree 60% with Cecil. That's sounded kind of what you were going with.
Probably it just sucks knowing that he was the one that kind of like ended it so aggressively. Like the fact he tried to call off the Reaniman, I guess, but they still continued to wail on Mark. But I
Yeah.
do think the earpiece or whatever was definitely a step too far. Like if you just sat down and just had mature conversations like, hey, Mark, I'm a little sketchy of you. Would you mind, putting this in your body just in case as like a safety measure? Like what happens if you get possessed one day and we have no way to get you back to your normal self? Like we need to have a countermeasure. Like, would you agree to this? Like there's no communication here. And that's what's really hurting them, I think.
So I totally agree. I think it escalated way too quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm going to lean that I think I'm more on Mark's side.
Yeah,
One, because Cecil lied about a bunch of things. He
very
told
true.
he told Mark, last season, no, I don't have any cameras at your mom's house. Yeah, we might have devices, but not cameras. It would never do that to your mother. Lo and behold, we're seeing surveillance footage of,
Yeah.
there in the
Mm-hmm.
room. Yeah, like you already said, having the chip in there, that's getting exposed. That was crazy. But just the way that Cecil escalated it, like, yes, Mark came in, Mark was yelling at Cecil. Cecil walks him to the white room. And then immediately when he pulls up those Reanimen, that escalates everything to 100. He didn't
You're right.
need to
Like
do that.
he didn't need
It's
to. He
not
could have
like,
just kept the conversation going down the hallway. Like you don't have to make it obviously feel like you're threatened and putting yourself in like an offensively defensive position.
yeah,
It's
exactly. I don't know if he was trying to just show that he has the upper hand and just get Mark to fall back in line, but
right.
he definitely escalated the situation because it's not like Mark was ever going to attack Cecil before that. But once Cecil pulls out these guys who start grabbing Mark, and Mark's just beating the shit out of them because they're also Sinclair's guys who he hates Sinclair. I get that. Like he's going to destroy them. He has bad memories with him. So
Mm-hmm.
I get that. And then Cecil pulling out the frequency to destroy and the chip in the brain. Yeah, that's just another strike against Cecil. And
Yeah.
he's like, "You're goddamn right. I put a secret weapon inside of you after what happened to your dad. I understand that, but you
It's
didn't
not
need
a
to pull it out
flex.
here." Yeah, like
Yeah.
you like
I
and
I was
so
sitting
it
there like Marcus like destroying the Reaniman, and I'm just like, oh, this is probably good for him in the sense that he's letting out so much aggression and frustration that maybe he just like kind of tires himself out and just realizes, okay, this is all sticks and stones. Let's just let bygones be bygones. But that's when he made the threat. Like Cecil doubled down and was like, "Are you sure you want to keep going?" And then that's when Mark makes the threat, and it's like, okay, fuck, now we're definitely splitting here. But
yeah.
it's that's the beauty of it, though. I do love how it's so gray for both sides, and I'm kind of jumping the gun here. We're probably about to just get into it anyway. But the whole Cecil backstory too, like it's hard for me to hate Cecil now, even too, at with the episode 2 knowledge of his backstory and seeing how noble he was. Like I
Yeah.
like Cecil. I do like Cecil, but he's just a fucking dick sometimes. He's not good at showing empathy or he's not good at communicating either. And I think that's where all of this is a problem, is that he just doesn't
Yeah.
know how to talk to people.
If he was more honest with people,
Yes.
like yes, he would get less done, I guess.
Hmm.
Like he gets shit done. And that's
Hmm.
Cecil's whole thing. But if he was more honest and upfront, I feel like he would have less of these "why would you do this to us" reveals,
Yeah,
which
like talk to Mark and be like, look, Mark, your dad that whole situation scared the shit out of me. Like, would you be okay if I put cameras in your house? Because again, like if you were to hypothetically get taken over and just become evil one day, like Mark has to understand that Mark, if any, also does understand that his powers are so great. You know, he has to hold back all the time when he's fighting these regular people. Like he of all people should know that if something made him become evil, whether it was against his will or even if he wasn't knowing it, whatever, there should be a contingency plan. That's just
Yeah.
me. But yeah, you're probably right. I'm probably 60-40 Cecil side. I'm willing to,
Yeah.
and I'm on a, you'll catch me tomorrow and I could probably easily be like, you know what I thought on it. Mark's side's totally right. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
digress. That's enough ranting on that whole situation.
And I'm sure we'll get more of the
Yeah.
relationship as the season continues and, see what happens. But it's really, really interesting that, we thought we had this solid guy that would always have our backs, and now they're splitting. So it's crazy. We'll talk a little bit about it more in episode 2. Just to jump back to some of my favorite lines from episode 1, when he's training and he lifts the iceberg and they're like, we found the heaviest thing we could find, and he lifted it. Like, what now? I was just like, that is so cool. Like,
that is such a great flex. Do you think it would be an iceberg though? Like, would that be the heaviest thing on Earth?
I guess
I guess
without it like being like, you can't like lift a building because there's like
or a
people inside of it.
mountain. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
stuff
you'd
like
have to
that.
rip it. Yeah.
So I guess, but yeah, and then they make the bench press that just adds resistance, and he's just repping like it's nothing.
If only,
So
man. If only.
well, that bleeds into my other 2 favorite lines of the episode, and they were both from Rex. When Rex and Invincible are fighting off the Declaration of Independence guys, and Mark is saying, "I'm just trying to hold back. He seems like a normal guy." Rex is just like, to the duo, yeah, I'd give up, buddy. I just witnessed this guy bench press the moon. I just thought like that was such an incredible line. And then
And it was funny when the guy punches Mark. And he's like, "Yep,
yeah, and
normal."
Mark doesn't flinch at all. He doesn't even move. And then Rex's other line when they're saved from Doc Seismic, and he goes, "We won. My dick's out, and I don't care. Woo! Guardians of the Globe, baby." When he said Guardians of the Globe, baby, I was like, that's totally fucking Party Wolf from Big Mouth season 1, where he's
Party
like, "Woo!
Wolf.
Party
Yeah.
Wolf." He's so good.
The character turnaround for Rex has been unbelievable because I honestly despised him in season 1. Like he sucked, man. Like I would see him on screen and legitimately like, oh, this guy. Now, all in for the Rex reform, baby. He is definitely one of my favorites now. I look forward to seeing how he interacts with the group going forward.
Oh yeah, he's a staple. So, anything else from episode 1 before we jump into episode 2?
I think I'm good. I think all of my comments I have saved so far for episode 2 now.
Alrighty. So, episode 2, A Deal with the Devil. We get this Cecil flashback. We figure out how he gets his scars. His boss, Radcliffe, reanimates these villains that we see Cecil take down. It was Knuckle Buster and Fist Force. I don't know why I told you the names, because I don't think we'll be seeing them again, because
yeah,
because we do see them, but Cecil shoots them immediately. He goes, this is how I feel about working with these criminals. Because
I have a feeling still that they could come back, because I mean, we saw Donald's been killed multiple times, hundreds of times, and he's still kicking.
That's true. They could just be like total zombies at this point or something.
But yeah, Cecil definitely made it clear that he does not work with criminals, at least back then.
I think it had a lot to do with the gas that these two set off ended up killing 17 innocent people. And it was really cool to see Cecil care about innocence so much, because we see him in the role he has now, and he's so cutthroat. It's like he doesn't give a shit about anybody. So it was a little refreshing to see that at one point he was doing everything, making sacrifices, having his skin melt off to save people. It was really cool.
It was honestly amazing the way they played how heroic he was, and the fact that the guy opens up, he's like, "You saved thousands of people," and he's like, "Just lay it on me, like how many people?" He said 17. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my god, that is a huge W compared to thousands. And Cecil's sitting here still like, tell the 17 families that we caught a W, see how they react. And it's like, this is the guy. Cecil is the man. He just, again, communication, man. He just needs to learn a little bit more like empathy, or just relating to people. He's just so dry and just, yeah, ready to just cut to the chase. It's like we need some more emotion, a little bit. But this was an amazing backstory. Luke made a fantastic comment that I totally agreed with. He's like, because he's in the prison, he gets sent to jail for killing the two heroes or whatever, and it takes him 3 years to reform the entire prison. Like he has it, he's the boss.
Yeah.
Luke was like, this could easily be a spin-off show. His 3 years in prison, it'd be like the Penguin almost, for the Batman. It's just like, that's not a bad idea. And I'd probably love every second of it. Just seeing normal Cecil out muscle all these super able people, it'd be crazy.
Yeah, like the guards shove him into a cell, and his cellmate is this big alien monster who's gonna squish him. And then all of a sudden, the next scene we see is the same big alien monster being like, "Hey, boss, you got a visitor." And like it's crazy. Just I totally agree. I would love to watch like a movie or a 5 episode season
Yeah,
of him in this prison.
it'd be
And
cool.
it's awesome. So this ends with his old boss visiting him in the prison, offering him his role because he's about to retire. And Cecil saying, no, like, I don't want to do what you do. You work with dirty people. And
Mhm.
his boss is saying, I told you before, like, I don't waste talent. I fix it. This place was your rehabilitation, just like he rehabilitated the other guys. And he also hits him with the line, you can be the good guy or the guy who saves the world. You can't be both. And that line really hits home.
It's a tough line. And I mean, it is kind of accurate. I mean, it's hard it's hard appealing to, everyone in the world, and not coming away as like a bad guy to all. It's such a real line, and I feel like it's very emphasized not only just in this show but like a lot of superhero movies. I feel like that's the case where we do see the good guys win or good guys lose a lot of the time, and at what cost. I think of yeah, like Watchmen. That was a movie where the good guys certainly didn't win, and it's maybe because they were too pacifistic. I don't know if that's a real word. Whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. But either way, it's just like it's it's hard. It's really tough.
Yeah. Brutal. But this also parallels exactly with what Mark and Cecil are arguing about in the current day. So we already talked about this, but Mark faces off against all of Cecil's Rihanna men. Cecil also reveals that he has a secret weapon. It was a frequency that incapacitates Mark. This from the monster that he fought in Atlantis,
That
which
was
was
also a cool little like just Easter egg kind of thing. Like, hey, just don't forget about this monster that was in season 2. Just a great another
yeah.
world seed plant.
And as Mark was in one of the many instances that he was in a hospital getting rehabilitated, they put this chip in his head. So Mark actually makes it back to the rest of the Guardians who see this frequency just killing Mark, basically. So the Guardians jump to defend Mark. The frequency gets blocked, and then Mark just destroys all the Reanimen. And then he's like, Rudy, get this chip out of my head right now.
Mm-hmm.
He chokes Cecil a little bit. It was pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a really good scene. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit more when we gush at the end of this. But we also get Mark telling his mom and Oliver all about this. And they tell Oliver, hey, we don't kill people. Because Oliver's like, why didn't you just kill Cecil? Just do it. And they're like, hey, no, don't do that.
Red
Uh,
flag, red flag.
Yeah, that was the beginning. We got Mark and Eve making up a little bit, and they kind of talk about Cecil and how Eve met him when she was just 14, and they also talk about future Eve. But Mark's always like, I'm sorry, Mark is saying, "Oh, I've always liked you, even when I was with Amber." So we got their relationship kind of getting closer to being a thing after a terrible first conversation. And then we got half the heroes leaving the Guardians, and that is Rex, Rudy, Amanda, Bulletproof, and Ray. All that's left is Shape, Smith, Samson, Kate, and Immortal.
Mhm.
We get Rick hearing the truth about Sinclair. Mark tells William and him all about that. We got Eve going to school to learn about architecture and construction. Amanda and Rudy make up a little bit, a little advancement on their relationship. Oh my God, relationships everywhere, because then we got Debbie and the
Yep.
other Paul, coworker Paul. They're going out on a date. We get Darkwing on the Guardians now. That's
Mhm.
crazy. And then we're going to jump back real quick into young Cecil. He's meeting Donald on his first day. You know, he's already a hard ass. He's telling the office needs to change, the office needs to be better. And this is when they actually meet Nolan for the first time. They see him fighting a monster on a beach. Cecil's going to go out there, talk to him himself, recruit him. It's pretty crazy, but this is when the file starts on him, and immediately they begin looking at countermeasures for him just in case. And that's when Cecil hits Donald back with the line, you know, you can either save the world or be the good guy. You can't be both. So
Mhm.
really, really interesting spot, like we were talking about. You don't know whether to root for Cecil. Party it does, a party it doesn't.
Mhm.
And then pretty much the last thing we get is just even Mark talking on the bridge, and they are officially dating. And I thought the line that Mark says, where he goes, "If you feel half as much for me as I do for you, then let's give it a try." Love that.
That was
Love that.
amazing. All in on the Eve and Mark storyline. I know a lot of people hated Amber.
Really?
I wasn't like, yeah, I wasn't on that train. I was totally fine with them being together, but there was always obviously that part of me that was like Mark and Eve just work because they both are superheroes. So it is great to see this kind of finally flourish a little bit. I know it's the early stages, but praying that this relationship goes well. I'm sure they'll have their bumps and, turns later in the season, but we'll see for now. And then I always just love a good Civil War. I mean, the Avengers Civil War movie was amazing. I loved seeing the heroes battle within each other, and that's kind of what we're getting here with, the two sides picking up. I know I said I didn't pick a side between Cecil and Mark, but I did really love how the Guardians of the Globe, at least half of them, were immediately ready to just back up our boy Mark and just willing to throw their jobs and potentially lives away just for Mark. I thought that was really, really touching moment. Just reminds me of those moments in football when, the QBs hit late or whatever, and the linemen come up and it's just like, yo, what the fuck, bro? It's just like one of those I got your back moments that I really loved. And again, I'm not choosing a side, but either way, that still was a really badass moment that those people care enough about Mark to just put their jobs on the line for him to get off easy.
Yeah, a lot of them were like completely shocked that Cecil. Well, first of all, they were just shocked at watching Mark like dying on the ground, spasming from this frequency, and they immediately probably were thinking that could be me. Like if
Yeah,
Cecil all of a sudden gets
100%.
pissed off, that could be me. So they're like, "Fuck this! We're not gonna fight for this guy. We're gonna defend the guy who seems to be, doing the right thing." So that was really cool.
It's been really
Immortal and
funny. It's been really funny on Twitter just seeing how divided the people are. Like,
that's
just
funny.
on, like, I saw the one I just saw before hopping on the podcast was like, name a worse character in Invincible. It was a picture of Cecil, and I was like, guys, let's not overreact here. Like, I get he just beat the shit out of Mark, but come on, like, let's not overreact here. And it's just funny seeing how people are really sticking to their sides in this when I just see it as like they're both right. I see the reasons for both of them.
Yeah, like we just talked about it so much, but like I could be talked either way because like
I know it just
Cecil,
you yeah.
like what you were saying, Cecil calls the Rihanna men to destroy, like beat the shit out of Mark in front of everybody. He zaps them there, and he's hitting the frequency. But when he sees Mark's really about to eat it, he's like, "All right, call them off. I'm just trying to send a message."
Mhm.
But at the same time, why are you fucking
Yeah.
like
Why did you have
frying
this
it?
in
Yeah, why are
it
you
all
frying his brain?
it just is fuel to the fire because it's just like Mark is already unhappy and it's just anything that he's immature. I will say, Mark, at the end of the day, but anything that he sees that you do wrong, it's like he will go a little step further. I don't know, man. It's just funny. It is still funny though, just seeing people just kind of defend their characters and get
Yeah.
into their. I like when shows do that. While people do get really way too pissy over a show about these things, at the end of the day, it still does make for great content in terms of just like, I want to hear your thoughts on why you believe you're right or why they're wrong, you know?
Well, Brian from Bridgetown would totally be on Cecil's side. He hates Mark as a main
That
character for
that
some
text
reason.
annoyed me way too much, even though it shouldn't really have, but I digress.
So, uh, it was really cool too to see Rex like spearheading the
Yes.
fuck Cecil and I'm gonna go help
Mhm.
Mark movement because all the Guardians are like hesitant. They don't like what they're seeing, but nobody makes the first move. And then Rex is like, fuck this, and goes to help Mark immediately. He even throws the stupidly throws some bombs at
Yeah,
Cecil.
that was like, what are we're taking things I thought he was trying to blow up his hand so that the device would drop versus him, like, trying to blow up the actual device, you know?
Yeah, and of course Robot knows exactly what he's trying to do and he's trying to tell him to stop, but the dead man switch just got Mark rolling on the ground. And this was my favorite part of the episode. Might be my favorite part of the season so far. But Mark's the frequency's killing him. The reanimen are just beating the shit out of him in the fetal position. Then all of a sudden, Robot goes frequency blocked. There's a little bit of a silence. Mark takes a breath and then just beats the shit
Yeah,
out of all of them. And he's
yeah.
slicing them with his hands. He's ripping them in two. He
Is it
was going
here
hard.
when he unleashes, like, his full-blown punch and, like, the one just kinda disintegrates? Like, it doesn't even just, like, get split in half from the punch, like, it legitimately disintegrates from how angry Mark's punch was right there, like, that was so cool.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, red is just on the palette, ready to
I
be
love it,
put
man, I'm
in.
a sick fuck, I love it.
And then right after this, Cecil goes on the short speech about like, you arrogant child, look at this mess you've made. He's like, don't you ever threaten me again. And he goes, and to the rest of you, and then just gets cut off with Mark just grabbing his throat and pushing him up against the wall. And I was totally like, hell yeah, I'm Team Mark right here. This is fucking awesome.
That was definitely called for in terms of, like, Cecil's beating a dead horse. Like, Mark legitimately almost just died, and you're gonna talk about how he's arrogant and how he's immature. You needed to get a little choking is all. You know, that's all I'll
Yeah,
say.
and he says, "Hey, you ever come near me or my family again, I will kill you."
Yeah. The last comment I have, at least in terms of maybe this episode, is the Darkwing when he joins the Guardians of the Globe. I feel like if Mark was in that moment, like watching Darkwing join, you know how he kind of like turns his head and he's like, look, like, I've made a bunch of mistakes in the past, but I'm here to change and like do good. Like, that's all. Like, if Mark was there to hear that, maybe he would then kind of understand where Cecil's coming from with this reform program. But Cecil's just kind of just straight up telling him, like, look, we turn bad guys into good guys. You don't need to know anything else. You just are going to hear that, you know, we adopt these people because they have good use for us. Like, that's not how you want to
Yeah,
say it. Just say, like, look, we've worked with this guy a long time now. We're trying to make him a better person. I think we've gotten these strides. He just doesn't have to be like all straight up about it and just be like, oh, we need them for their strength. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
be a little bit more emotional here.
yeah.
But I just feel
Seriously,
like if Mark saw that from Darkwing, just that little moment of sympathy or empathy, Mark would be
hmm
like, okay, I kind of understand where Cecil's coming from.
Darkwing says something to Mark along those lines, like, "I know I made mistakes," but that was right when Mark just found out about it, and he's still emotional. So, like you're
Right.
saying, if Darkwing like came and just sat down in front of Mark and was like, "Dude, like, I've messed up. Could you give me a second chance?" I totally think Mark might.
Yeah, it was just a high pressure situation. Mark's already frustrated. And like, he's
Mhm.
not going to want to hear this right there. But if they were to just like walk in a room and just sit down together, like, I truly think Mark would understand.
Anything else for episode 2?
Um, not really. Just not the Mark's mom storylines, whatever for me. I'm not too sold in onto that yet. But that's just me.
Yeah.
That's just not my kind of storyline personally.
I like it in the sense that you don't really get the perspective of a family member of a superhero, which is
True.
kind of new, and
Mhm.
it's like the real world struggles of that aspect. But
And it was an
when
interesting take on how I feel like most, superheroes keep it only to themselves. Rarely do their family members know about their dual life. This was
Mhm.
like one of the first times I've ever seen a parent or someone close to a superhero actually reveal their superhero identity to someone that they trust. This was kind of like a first time for me
Mm. Yeah,
because
but when
Mark
you got
made it a big deal. He was like, it should have been me telling him. I get where he's coming from, but his mom also wants to feel safe and like needs to know that she can trust this guy. So I think it was fine to do so from her perspective. I get again why Mark was mad, but she needs to feel some level of safety and she needs a therapist too. Like she can't just rely on her 19-year-old son, which is crazy to think about that Mark's like 19, maybe at this point 20.
yeah,
She can't rely on
seriously.
him all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, when there's Mark destroying Reaniman left and right, and we're getting that, and then it like cuts to Debbie.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, like
Bland Paul.
yeah,
Boring
like
Paul.
I kind of want the crazy fight scenes. Sorry,
Yeah.
but I digress. It was still cool.
Mhm.
All right, episode 3. You want a real costume, right? So this one's a little interesting, right? Because it opens up almost with like a side story. It's a little short story about these two superpowered individuals who turn to crime. They try to rob a bank, they fail, but they get away and they live, and they try to, go back to the hardworking life in actual, living, but things keep going wrong. So they try to rob the bank again, and they're caught by Mark. But what's interesting is Oliver shows up to help, and that begins the Oliver and his troubles issues. So we got this episode kind of jumps around a lot in between characters. We got short little bits on everyone. We
Mhm.
got Eve and Amber meeting in college, and Eve breaks the news that Eve and Mark are dating, but Amber already knew about it. Didn't think we were going to get much of her again, Amber, that is, but I
Mhm.
like her. I never hated her. I just thought it was never going to work out.
Mhm.
We got the Guardians that left now have their own base. We kind of get reintroduced to Isotope and his boss, which I don't have his name written
It
down.
was I had to look it up as well. It's Titan. Titan.
Titan, that's what it was.
Mhm.
And they are talking to Mr. Liu, who is part of the Order. And now that Titan is involved, he kind of needs to listen to the Order.
Did you not have Titan's name because it didn't show up on the Amazon Prime? Like when
Yes.
you hover, dude, I was like, what is this? Why are they not giving this man his credit? I had to go to Google to look up this man's name. Like, come on. It took me so long, or not so long, I should say, but it would have been nice to just see the name on the screen. I don't know why they didn't have that showing, but
I totally was like, I'll look it up later, and then never
yeah.
did. So
Yeah.
thank
I
you
literally
for
had a
doing that.
note said, look up this guy's name. And I did that before the podcast.
We have Mark training with Oliver. Oliver wants to fight already. He's all about that violence, but Mark is like, hey, let's fly before we fight. We also get Oliver getting a suit made for him. Well, this is actually weird because Oliver was making his own suit, is what it looked like. This is over at
Mhm.
Art's place, who voiced by Mark Hamill. Have to bring up Luke Skywalker every time
Of
I hear
course.
him because he's just the best. We got the Kid Omni-Man logo and name.
That was
We
so
don't really,
funny, to be honest.
yeah, we don't really like that. But we also
Mm.
get Mark getting a new suit. No more yellow, blue and black. Whoever said blue and black don't go together doesn't know anything.
I'm just going to interject here because everyone I see or have talked to at least seems to be that black and blue is their favorite now. They love the new suit. I'm going to be honest. Apparently this is a hot take. I'm all for the yellow and blue suit. Honestly, I love the yellow and blue. I don't like just the black and blue. Am I weird for that? Like, do you prefer the new suit?
I think I prefer the new suit. I do. Blue's my favorite color, but it kind of reminds me of the Phillies City Connects jerseys, and the yellow is my least favorite part about that. So I think
Okay.
that has a lot to do
Fair
with
enough, but
why I
I
lean
I find
towards.
myself being the minority here, man. I'm into the OG suit. I love the yellow, blue, and black, but just me. I'm sure I'll get used to the new suit, but not a
I
fan.
think
Hot take, apparently.
no yellow Invincible being like yellow too, just like the actual
Yeah,
title.
maybe that's like what also is like engraved in my mind too. It's like when I think of Invincible, like the title screen, it's in yellow. I don't know.
So back to the ep as Mark and Oliver are at Arts, they see that there's actually a prison break trying to happen. We got Kursk and Furnace, who we've seen before. They're trying to break out Multipol. This is by the order of the order, and this is Titan helping them out.
Mhm.
We got Debbie and Paul on another date. This is just kind of going more into their relationship. It's more of a thing. She reveals, we kind of already talked about this, but Debbie reveals everything to Paul, this normie. She reveals that Nolan wasn't a travel writer and he's not dead, and the attack on Chicago and Oliver and Mark and Invincible. And she reveals everything right there.
Mhm.
Pretty crazy. We got Eve moving back in with her parents. We got the Maulers back at the nuclear silo that the Lizard League attacked.
Mhm.
The Guardians come to stop them. The new ones. I'm sorry. The new group of Guardians from the old one, which is
Yeah.
Immortal,
Yes,
uh,
there you go.
Immortal, Shapesmith, Kate. They get worked. They get fucking destroyed. And who comes to save the day? But Mark, and of course Oliver follows. This is where it escalates a little bit with the Oliver storyline because
If we're
Oliver's
getting
ready to
into this
kill.
Yeah, if we're getting into this, I just want to preface this by saying I think Oliver is the fucking worst right now. I think he's fucking sucks. But that also is probably just a testament to like me and just he's a kid. I get that.
Mhm.
And he doesn't really know any better. This kind of just proves that I'm really not ready to have kids because if this was my kid, I would just be so done with him. Like, oh my god, this he's just he says I'm sorry when he doesn't mean it. It's I was the same way. Like I get it. Like kids are just like this. They say I'm sorry. They just kind of say things to get themselves out of trouble. But god damn, he was fucking pissing me off. The only thing I'll give him credit for is his entrance into the Mauler Bros and him saving Mark was pretty fucking badass. Other than that, this kid needs to go. This kid needs to freaking go. He was the absolute worst in these episodes. He was so bothering. So bothering.
I had the exact same thoughts going through my head. I'm like, Mark, slap this kid across the room, but I'm
Dude,
like, he's a kid. He's
something.
just, he's not only is a kid, he is a kid who's like all powerful. So there's nobody that he's really scared of, right? Because you're scared of the consequences of what will happen. But this is a kid who's not going to have consequences, really.
Right.
So in my head, I'm like, I get it. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God,
It just shows I'm
somebody's.
not ready for kids because this
Yeah.
heated me way too much. How this kid just he would say, "Yes, I promise I'll stay home. Like I won't go out." And then he's just darting out of the house to save Mark, who he's been told multiple times, "Don't go out, don't use your powers, whatever." And he's still
Mhm.
going out there. And he basically gets a slap on the wrist at the end of this. Like he doesn't get any consequences whatsoever for murdering two. I was going to say people. I don't know if the Maulers count as people, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
We
It's
need
crazy.
a therapist or something to break down Oliver on an emotional level and show him what he's doing.
I mean, Debbie did a great job in breaking it down in the sense that, look, do you care about me? Yes, I love you. Well, there are people out there who have relationships like what we have. Like that was a great way to break it down for him. The kid still needs to be punished. I mean, he just brutally murdered two people. Now, whether they deserve it or not is a different question. But at the end of the day, I'm going to vouch that murder's wrong, and I don't know. This bothered me a little bit, but it's one of those things where it's like, would you kill baby Hitler? given the opportunity. Like I
Well,
don't
you
know.
got to give him a chance. Oliver
Ah,
may become a good guy. He's not immediately going
yeah.
to become evil yet. He might. We'll see what happens.
But I'm
But
getting some red flags. I do think I would love for the scenario to turn out that he is good and him and Mark are just like bros and they just kick butts together. Like that would be best case scenario. But there
mm,
is definitely a world where he just goes down the Nolan path.
and it's also complicated because Oliver ages quickly, so it's like you can't
Yeah.
even teach him all of the lessons before, like that you would teach him as a toddler before he's like a young teen,
And he
and
doesn't
like
even have time to like process those like feelings of like empathy or anything. Like he just learns things
yeah.
and he's already almost through puberty at this point, it's so
The thing that is weird is he takes a lot of shit from like that's what dad did and that's what dad said, but he was a fucking baby when he saw his dad, so how does he even know that or see any of that?
I'm just gonna leave it into the realm that the alien species, again, like you said, they kind of age quickly. They're already super intelligent and they adapt very well. I'll just leave it up to that. Even if they're babies, they're still a part of a super sentient race. They
I
probably still
got you.
have memories of their birth, whatever.
I got you. Yeah, that works for me for now. Um, so we got Cecil walking a little too close to Oliver. Mark comes in, chokes Cecil out again. And after all of this Oliver hate, I was for some reason hype when Mark comes in and grabs Cecil again. I'm like, Cecil, don't you go fucking near that kid. Mark already warned you. So
See, I guess that's how I know I'm on Cecil's side because Mark did that, and I was like, bro, come on, like we don't you
I
just got here. You don't even know the situation. So I guess that does prove I'm a little bit on Cecil's side, but I get it. I
exactly.
get it. He did make the threat earlier. He's got to stand by it.
Mhm. And Cecil was like, "Oh, I'm here to clean up your mess," but everybody knows Cecil's doing more than that. He's probably trying to recruit the kid. He's already trying to do countermeasures on the kid. Cecil, just let Mark try to raise him real quick.
I love seeing
So
the memes on Twitter of people talking about Cecil's person that's in charge of teleporting him. Like they're like, oh, Cecil's teleporting guy needs overtime because it's not Cecil like clicking a button teleporting. It's someone pushing a button to transport him. There was like a clip from him, Cecil in season 1 when he's fighting Omni-Man. When he's just kind of like teleporting around. The guy on Twitter was just like, this dude needs overtime because Cecil's just able to stand there face to face with Omni-Man at the speed that Omni-Man can move and just trust his teleporter to be like 3, 2, 1, go, 3, 2, 1, go, like make the clicks at the
yeah,
right moment. So shout out to that guy. If we ever get a face to that person, they got a superpower in reaction time. Let's just say that.
no, I mean that's one of the coolest aspects of Cecil is he can just jump around wherever, and then he turns around and like he doesn't even stay still. He like takes 3 steps and he gets TP'd as he's walking, which is even colder. So
It's so cool, the teleporting.
it's awesome. And like you said, we kind of get a little bit of Mark and Debbie trying to teach Oliver about killing and what it means. But the very end of the episode, we
Mm-hmm.
get a little surveillance cam, which this is the second time we see it, but the first time Mark is actually notices it, runs out, grabs it, explodes. They don't see who it is, but we get a really short reveal. We don't see his face, but we just hear his voice, and he goes, "Oh, such a happy family." And it's Angstrom Levy. He is
That's it. Yep.
he is
He's
back
back.
somehow. He's an absolute animal. I could not be more excited because I thought Sterling K. Brown's voice acting
Mm-hmm.
from Angstrom Levy was the best in the show. I mean, J.K. Simmons, very close season 1, but I
Mm-hmm.
thought when he is full villain, full freaking out, screaming, saying, "I'm going to take you down with me," I thought it was some of the best shit I've ever heard. It was incredible. So the fact that he is back, I'm more excited that the voice acting is back more than the character's back.
It's such I agree. It's amazing. I don't know how they're going to pull this off. I imagine it's kind of just like a Kang situation where you kill Kang, but there's so many timelines of Kang. It's like you don't actually kill him. I wonder if that's going to be the outcome of all this. But absolutely right. I think the voice actor is just so amazing. I cannot believe they're returning to the show. I really thought he was done for. This is going to add just such another layer of anger and frustration from Mark that it's hard to see how he becomes the good guy at the end of the season, to be honest, because we Angstrom definitely pulled on a lot of those strings that Mark was still recovering from his dad in season 1, and he is not going to be a happy camper when he sees Angstrom. Technically, I guess we don't know if this Angstrom's good or bad. We know that the OG Angstrom, there was a point, like he had good intentions.
Mhm.
The
Before
accident
the accident.
obviously, yeah, the accident obviously jumbled his brain up and made him kind of see things a little differently. But Angstrom, at the end of the day, was a good person. So I'm just going to put it on the board that I don't think that this necessarily could be an evil Angstrom. If it's a good one, I'd love to see him work with Mark. But man, that was such a great ending to episode 3. I literally said at the beginning of watching episode 3, I was like, we are going to get the worst cliffhanger in this episode, and it kind of was.
It was, and it leaves us with so many things to think about too, right? Because one, is this the same Angstrom Levy? I want to
Mhm.
say no, because he had
I
his
agree.
head demolished. You know, they
Mhm.
didn't show it to us, but they didn't show it to us because it was so gruesome, because there was nothing there, because Mark demolished it so much. So
Right.
is this another Angstrom from one of the multiverse things that he was talking about? But at the same time, the killing Angstrom was weighing so heavy on Mark that if he sees him alive, something might be lifted from Mark's chest, or like his conscious, he might feel better because
Okay.
because
Okay.
because that is that murder basically. Mark
Mhm.
killing Angstrom has been thrown in his face so many times. And the acting at the end of season 2 was incredible when he was faced with the realization that he just killed somebody and the mental trauma that he went through there. So it would
Mhm.
be really interesting to see how Mark's going to react, because even the name is brought up to him, and Mark freaks out. So to see him, I really want to see if he's relieved, if he's angry, if he's confused. It'll be a really, really good reintroduction.
I can't believe we're back, baby. Can't
I
believe
know.
it.
It's so good. So did you notice this title sequence? It When it started out, it was like the Invincible Blue, and then it turned to the Invincible Red. So
Yep.
what were your thoughts on that?
I'm pretty sure maybe it was just that one. I thought each one had their own differences, but if you remember from last season too, they had that weird intro where it
It was
was the normal invincible, and then it would kind of crack and it would show spots of like black and red, right?
Yeah.
I
But
mean, at the time, I thought it was just like, okay, Mark's going down like an eviler path, a little bit of just aggression. And we did see that. I mean, the fact that he killed Angstrom was a great depiction of that anger and frustration. And so I was like, total tinfoil hat. No way this is going to come true. But like, what if Mark becomes evil? And
yeah.
the intros are kind of making me buy into that, especially with the red title. I just think it's more of a symbol of just Mark and his anger, because ever since season 2, he's had like the lines under his eyes. I don't know if you've caught that. I feel like he didn't have those in season 1. Like he just looks extra tired, essentially, is what I'm saying. And ever since the titles have been doing this, it feels like he's had those bags under his eyes almost.
Mhm.
I don't know, but it would be kind of interesting to see if Mark, hypothetically becomes the villain, and maybe Oliver actually ends up being like kind of like the MC good guy down the line, and they have to battle. I don't think that's the case. I'm maybe overthinking it. It could just be something as like his emotions, but I did notice that as well.
No, that's interesting, because I had two takes on it. And one of the takes that I was talking about revolves around Mark being seen as the bad guy, like you're saying.
Hmm.
But in like mine, since I was taking it more as these two criminals that we're following in the beginning of this episode, they see Mark Invincible as the bad
Hmm.
guy. They're just trying to make a living. They're just trying to survive. And then Mark comes in to basically end their lives and just kind of put them in jail. and that's why the Invincible is red, because they see him as evil, right?
I
Meanwhile, he's just doing his job.
I really like that, and going back to those criminals, the two criminals at the beginning of the episode. Again, that story is just a great kind of symbol of what we've been seeing so far in the, like, the Mark versus Cecil. It's, you don't know whose side to pick. Like, we've known for all these seasons, we've seen these villains, be evil, and we just are fed to kind of believe that, oh, Mark's the good guy, and all the heroes are good. But then you get into this backstory where it's like, oh, they tried to reform. They really tried to go back into society, but no, it still wasn't working for them. And so now they ultimately need to go back to a life of crime. It's sad. It's like you kind of want to root for the quote unquote villains here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. It's the whole, choose your side. It makes it that much tougher for as a viewer to pick sides. But no, you're absolutely right. I think I like where they're going and exploring this like whole gray area of things.
And at the beginning of that, I was like, why don't you guys just try to work hard for once, right? Just get a job, just try to make money the hard way.
And
And then
there
they
you
show
go.
that, and then they show them
Yeah.
losing other jobs. And I'm like, well, shit, I don't really know what to do anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
that was funny. And then also the other possible take I could see on the red title sequence was Oliver killing this episode. This kind of shows, that he has
Like
stained his
painting.
hands.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And all of that. So one thing about the Viltrumites that I fucking love that they always show is whenever they kill somebody or like fly through them or just like split them in half, they always stop abruptly and the blood just shoots off of them. And
Mhm.
then they have like the fully white, untouched uniform still.
Yeah.
This didn't happen with Oliver. He was covered in blood. But I just thought I would bring that up because that is one of the coolest and hardest looking things that the Viltrumites do.
Do you think that Oliver's suit is like his perma suit? To me, it didn't feel like a finished suit. I don't know why. It just I guess maybe because the colors didn't really like match his skin tone. Like I would have liked to see like a purple suit or like something that matches a purple to go with his skin tones. The suit felt really, it didn't look good to me, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think Oliver put it together. It wasn't exactly art
Okay,
putting it
fair
together.
enough.
So I'm hoping that art puts something together and he gets something good. And I hope
I
it's
did
not
like, yeah,
Omni
Kid
Kid.
Omni. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Kid Omni actually doesn't sound bad, but you obviously can't go with it because you don't want the
Mm-hmm.
name Omni in your thing. But that's just it's also ironic that they said that. I think it's also kind of like a shout, like a shout out to like comics, like how they have Kid Flash and like
Mm-hmm.
there's all these kid superheroes, and it kind of plays on that a little bit. But yeah, I hope there's a new suit that kind of that's a little bit better. But I think I don't really have any other comments personally.
Yeah, just a few things that I had. It was really interesting to learn that Rex was sold to the government by his parents when he was a kid. I didn't even
Yes.
know that was a thing.
Mhm.
Kind of explains why he was such an asshole, but this whole vibe of season 3 is he's turning around. He's being new. He's a good guy. He takes your criticism and then ignores
Mhm.
it instead of saying fuck you immediately.
Yeah.
So I like where he's going. Um, Eve's dad's name is
Oh,
Adam, which is weird because Adam and Eve obviously together, but Eve being Adam's daughter is really weird to me. And
and her name
also,
being Adam Eve. Her superhero
yes,
name is Adam Eve or whatever. Yeah.
also he's a prick, and I can't stand him.
I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot. That's the one comment that I left off saying on the recording. But fuck that guy. Eve's dad is the absolute worst human being, and I hope something awful happens to him. Like, she makes this plea like, I am born like this. I can't help who I am. You just have to accept me for who I am. And he's like, I guess. She hugs the mom and he's like, I need a beer. What the you need a beer? Grow the fuck up. I hate you.
I
Get him
know,
out of here.
and
Her
he's
dad is the
freaking
legit worst.
season 2. He's freaking out. He's like, I worked so hard, and that's why we have everything because I worked. Like, and she's giving you gold, and you're like, no, I don't want it because that's not, dude. It'll fix your life. It's not taking charity or whatever. It's literally just bettering your life. Like, I don't get it.
Sorry
Like,
you
you're
don't
too,
feel like a man if your daughter
yeah,
gives you things. Like,
you're too proud. You're too proud not to be the bread maker of your family. It's like, shut the frig up, Adam.
If
You
that was
suck.
my daughter, I'd be so proud of her. Just the fact that she has one of the strongest abilities in the entire show, and then two is like
Yeah.
genuinely one of the nicest people in the show. How could you not
Yeah.
be proud of her? I don't get it. That guy
It,
sucks.
good for Eve for finding the lesson in her terrible dad's parenting. And I
I'm
get,
surprised.
yes, everything that happened with the building she made in Chicago, she needed a reality check that you can't just do whatever. But to say that your powers make you dangerous are not a good thing, I'm like, shut up. Do you see her literally saving everybody's ass all the time? Like,
I will
okay.
say too, I actually do like it's not like the most interesting storyline, but I think it's interesting how she is like attending classes to better her superpowers. I feel like that's also something we don't really often see that much. And it makes sense, especially for her, because she physically can rearrange atoms and materialize things and just create things out of nothing. So it makes sense that she would want to learn how things are made essentially by going to these classes. So I thought that was a really cool and interesting way to bring out your powers even more rather than just brutal training, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, because exactly, I was thinking the same thing. You see superheroes all the time doing a montage of working out and training and getting ripped, but you rarely see them like studying and trying to get harder, like an Iron Man type montage where he's in the
Yeah,
lab trying to do something. So it's really cool to see Eve trying to better herself. Totally agree.
definitely.
Totally agree. A few little funny lines. I thought when Oliver and Mark walk in on Debbie and Paul making out, Oliver goes, "Are you guys gonna mate
Yeah,
now?" Like
yes.
that whole bug life thing. It's just so funny.
Yeah, that was really good.
The fact that they called him Invincible pissed me off.
Oh
I'm like,
my god.
just because he got rid of the yellow in his uniform, he looks exactly the same, but everybody in the world's gonna assume it's somebody else. Like, I don't know. The fact that the public called him Invincible instead of Invincible pissed me off.
He had and he was getting like mad when people were referring to him as Invincible, which is totally understandable because you're right. It's such an obviously the same person setup where I don't
Yeah.
understand why we're dubbing him another
Yeah.
name. It's
Like, imagine you wear a different outfit to work tomorrow, and all your coworkers are like, "Oh my god, it's David Boy. It's not the
yeah.
same guy. He looks completely different." I'm like, grow up, freaking grow
It
up.
is also funny how Debbie talks to Oliver about secret identities
Hmm.
when Eve literally just rolls around as is all the time. Like the only thing Mark has any different about him is he has goggles. There's no
Yeah,
real secret identities, but she
yeah,
it was
and
a good excuse in the moment to cover up the alien skin.
those fucking goggles get broken every single fight
And it's
anyway.
like,
So,
who is this guy? I can't tell who that is. The
I
broken
can,
goggles are really
yeah, I can
really
see his
throwing me
face
off.
perfectly, but I can't see his hair, so it's throwing me
Yeah.
off. And
Yeah.
then the last funny line I had were when the Maulers were at the nuke silo and they're talking about sending off their EMP and how everyone's going to have to pay them to use the internet and electronics through their new, shield. And they go, "We're so much worse than supervillains now. We're businessmen." I
Yeah.
just thought
Or
that
businessman.
the
Yep.
fact that that was their evil plan,
Alki
hysterical,
loved that line. Alki, of course, loved that one. I remember him
so
busting
funny.
out for that one.
Honestly, I'm a little upset because I don't know if we're gonna get the Maulers again.
Dude,
We might get them from like Angstrom bringing back like at different timelines ones, but I was a little bummed that Oliver killed both of them. It's another reason to be upset with Ollie.
yeah, I completely agree. The Maulers have been definitely one of my favorite parts of the show as like I don't want to call them like a side portion of the show because they are integral, but they have definitely been a joy to see on screen every time. Like their interactions with one another is really fun. Always trying to figure out who the original is, who the copy is always fun. Yeah, I don't know because the only thing I can imagine is that they have another body just off snoozing somewhere. But then you're
Mm,
kind of like in the duplicate scenario again of
yeah.
she had the backup. So I don't know. I want them back, but I do truly think this is probably the end of the
Mm.
Maulers.
If Angstrom brings him back because we know he worked with all the Maulers and all the different
That would be
multiverses,
fine.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's not the same clones that we've come to know and love.
Yeah.
All right. So we are getting towards the end here. I know we're getting pretty long, but I got 3 short questions for you, Dave, and they are put them on the board kind of predictions. They're
Okay.
going to you could say yes or no or just a real quick answer, but first question, what do you think is in store for Oliver? Do you think he's going to basically be Mark's partner and they're going to be a duo together? Or do you think they are going to grow apart from one another?
I think they'll be partners. I know I had the whole theory of, Mark could be the bad guy and maybe Oliver takes over the helm as MC good guy. But that just feels like a stretch a little bit. I just think Mark is just going through this angsty phase right now. And I think while Oliver does push his buttons a lot right now, I think ultimately he is a light in Mark's life. And Mark should feel proud to be able to like train him and work with him and and whatnot. So I think partners.
I have
But them
faith.
being enemies would be a better story, I think, to be honest. But I think partners.
I have faith that Oliver will grow up quickly and be able to learn what he's doing. And I think they're going to be a duo. I'm really hoping they're going to be a duo at least.
There was a moment when Mark is training Oliver that I'm thinking, does Oliver have more latent potential than Mark, especially when he's flying away and Mark kind of
Yeah.
makes the comment. He's like, damn, when did this kid get so fast? So I took it a little bit as maybe this kid's got some more oomph to him than Mark, especially with his powers developed a little way earlier than Mark's, all that stuff. So, but I want to see them together.
The next question. This is a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Mark and Eve will be together for the remainder of the show? Not the season, the show.
Are we
Up
counting?
until if
So like
maybe
no
if
breakups, whatever. Just they're good to go for the rest of the show.
up until death do them part. So death might happen for one of them.
There's drama. No, I think there's going to be like some bullshit fight that they're going to have. You should have done this. No, whatever. And they'll break up, but then love will ultimately triumph. So I think
So
they're,
yes,
I think they'll have like a bitter, like a small breakup, like a moment of maybe this isn't going to work, but then Mark will save her life or she'll save Mark's life. And then they'll be like, oh, we're totally meant to be together kind of moment.
I love that. I like that. I really want them to have a kid because we've already seen Nolan have a
Oh,
kid with 2 different species. So I'd like to see Mark have a kid with another soup and that just be the ultimate child of all time.
it would be the ultimate child. If you're working with Viltrumite blood as well as the superpowers of Eve, then you're just goaded. You're goaded.
Yeah, seriously. All right, last question. We'll wrap this episode up. And this one, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'll give you my answers first to give you a little time to think. But
Okay.
if you had to pick 3 characters who you guess will be dead by the end of the season, who would you pick? Now, I'll give you mine real quick. I think Samson on the OG Guardians.
Okay.
I have a feeling he's not safe. I think Darkwing 2, Darkwing number 2 is not safe as well. So, I think he could be on death's door. And then I'm gonna go bold here, and I'm gonna go Krieg. I think the Viltrumite leader Krieg, who is right now kind of seems to be the ultimate bad guy. I
Mm-hmm.
think he might die by the end of the season if the season pace goes well and we get a big confrontation. I think he might be kaput. Now that's what I'm hoping. So
That's a good one.
Samson, Darkwing, and Krieg. And I'm
Okay.
writing this down. So whoever you say, it's official.
All right. I will go Paul, Debbie's Paul. That could be a wild one, I think. I could see
Ooh,
that because in my head with that one, obviously Nolan has admitted at the end of season 2 that he misses his wife. So there is still kind of some embers of romance potentially brewing for those two.
Ooh, that's a
And
really
obviously,
good pick when you say it like
yeah.
that. I like that.
So, and I think she's too in deep with like superheroes as a whole that I don't know if she could just settle down with like a normal guy. Like she needs someone that's going to help her raise Oliver, who clearly is a problem as of right now. Another one that I'll say, dude, I was gonna say the immortal, but like his whole thing is that he can't die. But
Well, I almost wrote it down as well. So I don't think that's a bad pick whatsoever.
I'll go with him. This one I just feel like is just gonna be a throwaway one. I'll just say Isotope. That's just so random, but I'll just say Isotope
That's not
because I
bad
feel like
either.
we're gonna get into more of the Titan storyline as his power grows and or rather his influence grows in the city. And if there is a clash, I don't think it'd be Titan to die. Titan could, because that would add sadness. I mean, we know that he has a family that he cares for a lot, and that would be like a big blow to the audience and like the family. But I'll just do Isotope for now because I think we are going to have some confrontations in the like the order, whether it's with our gang or within their own gang. But I don't think Isotope is a mainstay for the order.
Wow. I love those picks. I'm not gonna lie. They might be better than mine.
I was gonna
Because
say
Isotope already talked about getting whacked by the order, so I
I
like it.
like your Krieg one. I was because you said Krieg, I almost said Anissa, but I didn't want to be like, that's just the same thought process as Paul, like big bad kind of. We have some obstacles, we need to beat them at some point. So I didn't want to copy your thunder there, but Anissa did come across my mind after you though said Krieg. I think Krieg is a good one as well.
But all right, I think that's going to do it for our coverage of season 3, episodes 1, 2, and 3. Absolutely loved it. I don't know about you, Dave, but cannot wait for episode 4.
I can't wait to be on the recording with you next week, baby. That will be it for today's episode coverage of Invincible. If you like what you heard, give Bingetown TV a follow on all of our socials. That's at Bingetown TV on X, Instagram, YouTube, the works. Be sure to join our Discord, which is linked in our episode description below. Chat with us about anything and everything that you're watching with us or anything that you're currently watching and want us to know about. We're also going to ask for you to check out our newest Bingetown TV feeds called The Core, which is covering all of the newest and hottest Apple TV shows, currently covering Severance. We also have Binge Empire, which is currently covering Dexter. And I believe the last feed that we have is the Unreal podcast, which I think is covering The Traitors. So be sure to check out all 3 of those feeds. They have a little bit different tastes and textures for you if you want to check those out. Then lastly, for our podcast catalog, check out bingetowntv.com. There's a nice alphabetical list of all the shows we've ever covered on there. So it's the best place to hear all of our podcast coverages. We are the Final Form Podcast, and thank you so much for listening.